The luxury, it's not about the products. It's about the dedication of someone to do something for the others. And this, what matters, what brings from that perception. It's about the supply chain. It's all about the train of doing a product. What do you have on behind? Dedication of people who does and use his best talents, dedicate love, dedicate time, dedicate research for best materials, dedicate to do something with so much quality as you would do for yourself.
Imagine a doctor who trades his stethoscope for a sewing machine, who climbs the Andes, makes his own jacket by hand, and somewhere between the altitude and the ice decides, this is what I want to build. That man is Oskar Metsavaht, and what he built is Osklen, a brand born in 1989 from a tiny store in Búzios, a beach town in Rio de Janeiro that became one of the most forward-thinking fashion label in the world. Osklen didn't wait for sustainability to become a buzzword. They were working with Amazonian pirarucu fish, organic cotton, and recycled polyester before most brands have even heard the word ESG. They built the Institute E, a nonprofit dedicated to proving that beauty and responsibility are not opposites. They have increased the income of over 1,000 riverside communities in the Amazon. They made a sneaker sole from natural latex, tapped directly from the forest. This year, Oskar signed the uniforms from Brazil's delegation at the Winter Olympics in a collaboration with the Italian Moncler. This is Fashion Label Brazil, Season 3, brought to you through the partnership between Abest and ApexBrasil, with a simple but ambitious mission to bring Brazilian fashion to the world's best stores, buyers, and conversations. I'm Ale Farah, and my guest is the doctor, alpinist, artist, activist, CEO, and one of Brazil's most iconic fashion voices, Oskar Metsavaht. Welcome.
Ale, it's a pleasure to be here in this podcast that you're doing with Abest, our Brazilian Designers Association.
Oskar, you climbed mountains, and somewhere in the ends, a fashion brand was born. Tell us what actually happened.
I was educated in a family, or perhaps my talent. I was an aesthetic and artist since young. And also, as a physician, I specialized in orthopedy and sports medicine. I was during my residency as a physician, I was invited to be a part of a research at an expedition into the Andes, to the Aconcagua Mountain, the highest peak in the Americas. You know, I'm a surfer, I was a skateboarder, but in that time I began doing climbing. And in the team, I was chosen to take care of our health, of course, as a physician. And as in Brazil, in the 80s, of course, we didn't have any technical clothing for high altitude mountains. And so it was hard to get outside as we didn't have so much money for this expedition. And then using my knowledge in biophysics, what I mean, ergonomy, biophysics, anatomy, the movement of the human body, because it was what I was studying as a physician. I created this jacket, the whole suit, thinking in the movement of the body, the needs of transpiration, breathability, and of course, isothermic layer that would protect from the cold. Because we got that 30 degrees Celsius below zero in one storm that we had there at 5,000 meters high. And I did our jackets, our clothing, and it worked very well during the expedition. We were all, even I, of course, we are surprised with that. International climbers that were at the mountain also liked that. The first thing that would come for them, it was the aesthetics. the aesthetics became good. I had to choose the colors, etc., the combination of the colors. This expedition was on television, at a documentary television in Brazil, and I became quite a famous young climber in that moment. Just after that, I went to the Alps in the Andes. I was invited to climb the Mont Blanc in France. And on the same time, I went to Paris to do part of my study and sports medicine at Institut National du Sport in Paris. Living in Paris with my sister, who was an artist painter, she was doing her master in Sorbonne. I had the chance to live with her and learn much more about the art. My family had a good relationship with Jean-Louis Lesage, Le Baudrier, and I had chance to be there in his atelier, in his fashion studio. For the first time, I could see what was an atelier, a fashion studio.
As an internship or just to visit?
Now, Francis,
Oh.
because as we live in Versailles, we should take the train every day. And my sister, she was in Sorbonne, I was in Institut National du Sport, and sometimes we didn't have our schedule on the same time. So what we used to do, to go to his atelier, that was in the Opera in Paris, and stay there waiting one for the other. And being part of the family, I could sit around to watch Baudrillard's working, that art, that high fashion haute couture. And I loved that. That I think was something that, together with my photograph and my filming from the expeditions, did bring me closer to art and to understand the fashion much more than this creativity. So when I came back to Brazil, working as a physician already, I had the desire to show to my friends, to everybody, the jackets I have created, and also the photographs and filming for my expeditions. It was, I would say, a mix of my National Geographic desire of being adventures, together with this touch of the fashion and the desire to express, to show my photograph, my filming, and the jackets I had done. And of course, as a young physician, we didn't have any money. But the few money I had, I opened a space in Búzios. It's a beach resort close to Rio de Janeiro, where is a cosmopolitan place where there are many sportists like me, people that travel around the world to ski, to windsurf, to surf, snowboard, etc. And I could share with them not the brand, not only my work, but a kind of a lifestyle that I like it, a more cosmopolitan way. I can be in Búzios, in Rio de Janeiro, and preparing my luggage to travel next week to the Himalayas, to Alaska, to Indonesia, to Maldives. By the way, passing through after this trip in a fashion week in Paris to complete, visiting some galleries and museums. So I think I didn't create a brand. I think I create a segment of a lifestyle, not a segment. Through the brand, I could express a kind of lifestyle from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro, that's universal and cosmopolitan, as we actually all are.
So when did you realize the people wanted the clothes? Before the store in Búzios or during the expedition? When was that?
Because before there wasn't any brand. I did the jackets, didn't have any brand. It was not in my mind to be a designer. I was an amateur artist and a doctor, a physician, just beginning my work back in Brazil. But friends like it, loved the pieces. And I swear that in the opening, it was in December in the opening, it was a very small place. In the opening was an international success since there, because in Rua das Pedras in Búzios, is, as I said, a cosmopolitan way. International people coming in, Brazilians ones, some friends of mine from São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro then went to the opening. And since there, I saw the eyes of the visitors that, wow, I'm in the right way. I didn't even know what I wanted. I wanted to share with the others what I had done. And since there, Osklen was a success, year after year.
You have been talking for years about new luxury. Now, in 2026, everything's happening environmentally, culturally. It feels like the world is finally catching up to you. What does new luxury actually mean?
I loved this question because it means your perception of my work, of Osklen. New luxury comes from this lifestyle, doing an expedition, being in Paris to study, to be involved in art and fashion, and not about buying or being this place to be something snobbish, but living it. I think it's already a luxury. A luxury for me is something that is not exclusive as everybody describes luxury. That's not expensive. It doesn't need to be expensive. For example, all of us, we had this experience once in life, a wonderful sunset, for example. You said for yourself, wow, this is luxury. This is great. What I mean, the luxury, it's not about the product. It's about the dedication of someone to do something for the others. And this, what matters, what brings from that perception. It's about the supply chain. It's all about the train of doing a product. What do you have on behind? Dedication of people who does and use his best talents, dedicate love, dedicate time, dedicate research for best materials, dedicate to do something with so much quality as you would do for yourself. And when you do something like that, you are being a noble person, because the most interesting thing of the human values is dedication to the other. And luxury, if we see, for example, Monsieur Louis Vuitton, that maybe today we would say, no, it's snobbish, it's a symbol, status, etc., etc. But we have to remember the foundation of it. Monsieur Louis Vuitton, he was someone who dedicated to the research materials, sewing it very well, doing the quality to do travels, expeditions, etc. And what's the new luxury? New luxury, it was in the 90s, by the end of the 90s. As you know, I began doing sustainability in 1998 with that first organic cotton farm in Brazil. And when I could see how it was developing, the process of a chain, developing the seeds of the cotton, the plantation, it's the harvest, or artisanal materials also, I could see that it was by the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s, the luxury brands were going high, high, and high to sell to Chinese, to sell to Brazilians, to Argentinians, to Russians, as became more and more brilliant, more and more exclusive, etc., etc. And for me, when I would see that, I say, well, this is not interesting at all. I think more interesting this, those things that come from poor communities in Brazil, from indigenous, ancestral people from the Amazon forest, our materials for fashion that would come from the biodiversity of the forest of the Amazon. That's the work I began working on next years. New luxury comes from the values for the 21st century, and not the old industrialization model that we came, and not the luxury appeal that some brands, I don't think they are the brands, I think are the customers. They look for luxury. They don't know what luxury is. They don't even know how that product was created, who was the designer, how was the supply chain, was fair for every link of the chain. And these are the values of this new millennium that we are living. And if we do great aesthetics, quality, being fair in our supply chain, we have in our hands something new, necessary for the planet, and mostly more exclusive than the luxury one thinks. This has been the new luxury for me. So now let's get specific. What Osklen does with material is unlike anything else in fashion. Can you walk us through what e-fabrics actually means? Tell us about Pirarucu. Tell us about the forest. If you see, in 1992 was the most important conference of the UN in Rio de Janeiro. It was the first time that we, society, planet society, talk about sustainable development. I had a chance, I was in Rio, to see that, to understand this concept. That because I said, well, if I develop something from a sustainable way, this can become profits and utility for society and not exploration of the natural resource. Of course, Osklen was born like almost the same years of Rio, 3 years before, right? In that moment. 2 years, because it was December, yes. Oh. And in 1994, a group of biologists from Botanic Garden in Rio, friends of mine, they asked me to do their clothing for their expedition in the Amazon forest. I said, yes, okay, great. I love doing that, etc., etc. And they invited me if I would like to participate with them, because they knew about my expeditions, but never in a forest. And I went with them. 1994, when I got there, I could see the beauty, the hugeness of our biodiversity in that place. and also the richness of our ancestral cultures. So, with that in mind, a designer, an artist, an entrepreneur, understanding what was coming for the next century, how we were changing, how means of luxury were changing in my mind. And when I saw that, I said, come on, we have this richness that we don't use it. On the same way, I could see the deforestation, the mining, the exploration of our natural resources from the Amazon in a huge way. So when you come from that, you can't not be an activist. This richness versus this aggression. And being a creative, I could, envision. I could envision what we are now. I could envision that this was a way to go in. And I said, I want to be protagonist of this change. I'm a physician. I was still a physician by the end of the 90s and a designer. What a designer, fashion designer, other designers do. We transform nature research commodities into utile and beautiful things for society. We transform, we create value on that. And if we create value on that, creating together a sustainable way, social impact, environmental sustainable way to the supply chain, we are doing something new. And then you asked me about the pirarucu fish skin leather. I had a chance once to see that in Norway they used to do some accessories with salmon skin. And that I say, as everybody gets surprised when we talk about fish leather, fish skin, as using in fashion, etc., in accessories. We all get surprised about that. And I went to read, and of course, the Eskimos in North Pole, they used to use skins to protect themselves, and they used to use also fish skin to do some accessories for them. When I came there, I said, wow, this is super cool, sustainable, because you used to nurture, and instead of throwing away the skin, you utilize it. It's a kind of upcycle on the product. And I came and said, wow, this is great. I was thinking about our Atlantic Ocean fishes in our shore. Brazil is huge, has a huge shore. And we tried some fishes from saltwater, it didn't work. And we tried some other fishes, and someone told me about the pirarucu fish skin. And then I went with Fernando, who is the founder of Nova Cairu, a friend of mine. He had a small cannery, and we went to the Marajo Island in Pará, near Belém, in a fish pirarucu farm that they had there by IBAMA. IBAMA is our environmental department in the state. A sustainable project to produce the meat. And they used to throw away, of course, the skin. When we saw the skin, because I had only seen photographs, I said, wow, it's wonderful. This is great. And that began. We took years to develop it because can you imagine to protect the skin in a place when you don't have electricity energy to keep it frozen? It's far away from São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, where the industries for factory, for accessories are, and the tanning. The industry didn't know how to tanning. And Fernando and his partners developed a process that became, and Osklen was the laboratory, not only for the fishing, but for the latex from the Amazon, the Utah from the Amazon, and other materials that we have developed along those 30 years to the Brazilian and international fashion industry. Osklen is a laboratory. Osklen is my little atelier. Osklen is where I can express how I see the world, how I live it, how my friends live, how people live, where I'm inspiring myself. Even living in Rio de Janeiro, that's a cosmopolitan city, close to nature, but seeing it universally. And the fish skin, when I saw the fish skin, the first tests, I said, wow, it looks like the exotic luxury skins that we in fashion use for long, long centuries. They are wonderful, but they come from a not sustainable way. Most of those animals are in part of close to extinction, as we know. When I saw that on the fish skin pirarucu, I said, wow, it has the texture, it has a great quality. It has elements that come from the nature, like the luxury ones, but in a sustainable way. And most important for me as a Brazilian, I'd say, coming from the Amazon forest. It's a forest, a region of the planet that needs our help for any professional in any segment anything we can do, therefore, to develop and bring more work in a sustainable way and that cause economic and social impact there, it's important. This was the way, as a designer, as a creator, how I became an activist who helped to keep the forests alive. The success of the Pirarucu fish skin, that my vision was, and did it happen? It's going on, I believe. My vision was that the Pirarucu fish skin bags, accessories, would be the symbol, the icon, the point of the arrow of the Brazilian luxury, because it comes from social impact and environmental development in the Amazon forest.
Yeah.
It carries through my work. Some other brands designers use our project now already, the Pirarucu fish skin.
Yeah, a lot of them. Kiki always, everyone. Yeah.
Yes, Ricky was one of the first. And what I mean, I said this is the icon of the new luxury, and it's the icon from Brazilian luxury. It's already in many museums. It's in an FIT museum. It's in the Design Museum of Melbourne, Australia. And most important, I would say, and that helped to bring this context that I think about an icon, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, they exhibit one of my bags as a symbol of the new luxury on the 21st century.
I think it was in that exhibition from nature to something.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that they had my bag. I didn't know. They never talked to us. It was a friend who was in London, went there, saw it, and sent me a picture. Then we made contact to them. And now it's part of the collection of the museum. And it's the only Brazilian design at the museum till now.
Wow.
So, during the conference of the G20 leaders of the planet in Rio de Janeiro 2 years ago, the Brazilian government gave as a gift present to the other leaders and their wives a purse for the women and a bag for the leaders. Prince Williams was in the Earth Prize last year. He asked a friend here to buy one bag of the fashion. So, can you imagine from that trip in 2004, I went to the Marajó Island in the Amazon to see the fish, to all this journey to get at the Victoria and Albert Museum. It's a great process. It's a way, an example that we can bring value, this new luxury perception from products and services that comes from the Amazon forest and the other biomes in Brazil, and of course, many other cultures in the world.
Yeah, and it started the conversation. I mean, it changed the lives of thousands of people there in Amazon, right? Oskar, let's talk about Osklen in 2026. What's the chapter? What are you building now?
I think as anybody who works on the fashion industry or in the other segments, we can't envision so far and even so short in the way the planet is now. Everything is in high speed and everything with some values of what we were thinking about this new millennium, about peace and love, sustainability, etc., with technology. We are living in a kind of chaos. In the chaos, you have opportunity to create, to recreate yourself. For Osklen 2026 or for the fashion industry, I think that less is better. Luxury is less. It's education, culture. I think we don't need to popularize the consumption of fashion. We have to popularize the culture of fashion because all of us, we have to understand we don't need so many pieces, we don't need so many things. Fashion is about much more individual style, and who knows the culture of fashion, knows the value behind, knows the designers, knows the brands, knows the history, knows who's involved around not only the production of the products, but mostly about the culture of the fashion, like you, a journalist. We have to educate ourselves to consume less and less. Of course, it's a business. We want to sell more and more. But the way I'm following, getting into more luxury we can get. Sustainable, but quality, universal language, originality are the main pillars for that. Being original from some culture or your own culture depends of the brand. We need quality, we need sustainability, we need great design, we need culture, fashion, everything together to go to a next step.
So this year you did with Moncler the uniforms for the Winter Olympics. What was your message there? What did you think when you were creating?
First began with the invitation from Remo Ruffini and Lucas Bertolin, our great skier. I was invited by them, but not by the Brazilian committee. It was a great creative process. Remo suggested, showed the 60s of Moncler, that when Moncler used to participate in the Olympic competitions as a brand, and with my expedition, clothing, my pieces, my history, my knowledge about technology, ergonomy, etc., and with the sports, I'm a snowboarder. From climbing and surfer, I found something that could be the two loves of my sports. It's snowboarding. I snowboard in Alaska, I snowboard in Himalayas, in the Andes, etc. I do documentary films, and I create for each expedition. I do the same thing I did for that one, my first one in 1986. I love to create a new conception for us on the technical clothing for mountain to use in my expeditions. Through the video, photography, films that we do, I share with the audience my experience and also my collection of technical clothing. So with those materials together, we created the custom, I would say, of our team. What I wanted with that, for me, it's not a performance, but it's a show. And why the white? Nobody wanted the white before, but well, it came from them. First of all, the white is the color of a paper. When you have a white paper and you begin to do a design, or it's a white canvas where you begin with your colors coming on, or it's a mountain where you design your style in the mountain when you go through with the skis or with the snowboard. So I said the white is the canvas of this competition. It's about winter sports. And I didn't want to bring Brazil getting into the show, the opening ceremony, being something, I would say, a stereotype of Brazil. And coming there with our great happiness, the furor, etc., showing that we are, this is Brazil for the world, happiness, etc., colors, exuberance, tropical colors, etc. I said, I think we are coming to a country and other countries. The mountains and snow do part of their culture. Our culture is not that. So let's come in quietly, respectful, in all white, and inside the coat, the jackets, our tropical colors, the colors of the Brazilian flag. And we come on the white, and from the white snow, from the white Brazil richness, that is nature, is coming through inside to outside. And Lucas loved it because he's a performance skier number one in the world, but he's a performance guy. He loves fashion, he loves dancing, he loves to express himself artistically. And that we did for Moncler is the most successful event project for branding they did until now. It was in the whole magazines, fashion magazines and sports magazines around the world. Super successful.
Everyone loves Brazil, and I think Osklen helped to build this image, right? I mean, Brazil very sympathetic, but Osklen put Brazil in another level outside Brazil. I'm talking to you from the south of France right now, and I remember all the designers coming to Rio and going to the store to buy not just the shorts or the t-shirts, but also the clothes and the sneakers and everything, right? So congrats on that.
Mark Jacobs, all of them, they used to come.
All of them,
All of them.
yeah.
Because Rio is Rio, and Osklen was a visit to do.
Yeah,
Of
a
course, they
monument.
love
You
it.
have to go to. You have to go to
Yeah,
Osklen.
they love my tropical elements that I bring because I bring maybe more sophisticated, I would say, more quietly, more minimalistic, without losing our huge expression
Brazilian
as
soul.
the Brazilian soul. But once it was so interesting, Marc Jacobs' partner in the company,
Robert Duffy.
Robert Duffy, exactly, Robert Duffy. He was in the Panama store and he bought two cashmere pullovers of Osklen because he loved the cut. Remember that time I had my atelier in Milano because I had stores in Milano. I was developing the leather jackets and the cashmeres. And as in cashmere was made for rich people in that time, I would make 2000s, were fat, older men. So the cut of cashmere, who understands what I'm saying, was unfittable. And we were living the time of the fitting, like a Slimani style. We weren't at the moment on the same fitting for the men. And I did the cashmere more fitted. It seems something that's so obvious, but it wasn't. And at the point of Robert went to the Ipanema store to buy the cashmeres I made in Italy by my own design.
Wow, this is very global.
It's very global. It's, you know why I'm saying that? I remember when managers called me and they told me, you see how we can do a brand in luxury and with winter clothing. I understand about winter. I live in Rio, but I understand about winter. And they were always surprised. My team in the store, to see the cashmere. But when he called me and he said that Robert was there buying, I said, you see, come on. When I began doing snowboard jackets gear, people would say, wow, how can a Brazilian brand do that? Brazil, there isn't any mountains with snow. There is no skiers, no borders in Brazil. I said, no, we have. And look what happened now. We have a Brazilian world champion in the Olympics. You know something interesting I got a few days ago? It was my expedition was in 1986, 40 years ago exactly, in February. And in February was the project that we showed at the Olympic Winter Games. And
the
40 years
anniversary.
we had the Brazilian the anniversary. I created that piece for the opening, and Brazil was Finnish champion.
It's not just a coincidence. It was God's.
It's for sure the Olympic gods from Greece.
Yeah, I got it totally. So we are arriving to the end of this conversation that I'm enjoying so much. But let me make you one last question. In over 35 years, you built a brand with a soul. What do you hope someone feels in the moment they put on an Osklen piece? And also, if Osklen didn't exist, what would be missing in fashion?
I'm going to answer the second one because I think it's easier. What I brought for the fashion industry internationally, it was thinking about sustainability in the time that sustainability was something that people wouldn't imagine being something as luxury or as fashion designer or fashion forwarded.
Desirable, right?
Desirable and forwarded. And this was why I would say, my activism was to begin developing projects. What is interesting about us is that we use sustainable materials. We developed most of the sustainable materials with industries, with cooperatives, with academy, etc., for the fashion industry. And we fomented it. It's great. My designers love to work at Osklen because they have not only what the standard industry brings each collection, new technological materials, etc. We use new noble fabrics like silk, cotton, wool, etc., etc. But we bring different materials that brings more challenge for the team. That comes from new textures, new colors, etc. From these raw materials that when we develop. So I believe it would take longer to the fashion industry to understand the green side of it, understand that luxury would be very important to bring attention and value for the supply chains, for social impact and environmental impact. I don't know if you know, there's something interesting. Patagonia with Yvon Chouinard, he was the first to do some projects in sustainable for clothing. In 1992, he did the polyester, recycling the polyester they use on the fleece, their coat fleece. Second, it's who is recognized nowadays is Osklen with me, with the organic cotton in Brazil. And the third is Stella McCartney, Stella in 2004, with the veganism that she brought in. We are considered the three pioneers because we began at that time as some other designs, some other brands, but the other ones did some projects and it stopped doing, they didn't keep. And we are consistent till now.
I didn't know that. I mean, I know the story of all of you, three of you, but I didn't know. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because a lot of people does something, then give up, and then
Yes.
you are striving. Yeah.
Exactly. And we are living a transition of the planet, transition not only the fashion industry, transition in many aspects. We are not going to change 200 years of industrial revolution to our own revolution in 1, 2, 3. It's already 3 decades since the 90s. It will take longer. That's why I came with the ASAP, ASAP, ASAP. as sustainable as possible, as soon as possible. The first question, what people would feel about wearing Osklen. I think it's freedom, the freedom that you can wear that piece, that look, any place, any moment. Always the thinking of hybrids. Osklen could, since the beginning, be worn by men and women and exchange some pieces. Osklen is interesting because we always love it to mix the luxury textiles, the classic ones, with those rustic ones from sustainable development and with technological fibers. I think when you wear Osklen, you are wearing a Brazil that's genuine and sophisticated, that resembles how we Brazilians are universal, but living in Brazil. I think through many aspects of the culture, like music, dance, cinema, literature, theater, a way of expression of our culture, fashion is the same. And I think Osklen is one of the protagonists of showing a sophisticated Brazilian, but not snobbish in our way, in the Brazilian way, in the simple way, where sophistication comes from simplicity.
Yeah.
I think is that.
So I'm very glad to talk to you again. And I mean, knowing more details about this beautiful history that you have. Thank you so much for everything that you do for fashion and for Brazil and for us. And I wish you great success, more and more, even more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Fashion Label Brazil. Today, we had the privilege of talking to one of the most influential voices in Brazilian fashion. Oskar Metsavaht reminds us that fashion can go far beyond clothing. It can be a platform for culture, innovation, sustainability, and meaningful change. His journey shows that building a global brand starts with a clear vision and authenticity. Oskar, thank you so much for sharing your time, your experience, and your values with us. And thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Abest and ApexBrasil. I'm Ale Farah, and I see you in the next episode of Fashion Label Brazil.